All right, let's dive into DESI 3.0. We're going to talk about how to use the plan view map. And to bring up the plan view map, you can look up here in the top right corner. There is a couple different buttons that you can click to show information in different ways. But this globe here in the top right is what you want to click on to show the map. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is get familiar with this left side of this panel here with a bunch of different options. So we'll start up here in the top left. This is our domain of the data that we're viewing. So right now we're looking at the href in the CONUS domain, and that's this outer blue square. And inside that we have a nested domain, which is what ends up being displayed on our map. And we can move that around by dragging this marker to different parts of the CONUS and then hitting submit. And that's going to update our data view. So you can see there that it moved over toward the eastern part of the US. And we can move that wherever we please. And one of the other nice features is you can change the size of the domain too. So if you want to bring in less data, say you're out on site, you're working a fire, and you don't have as good of an internet connection, this is a way to reduce that so you're not having to wait as long to download information. So if I go here and I can decrease the size of my nested domain. So we'll just change some numbers here. We can see how that updates the chart here, that box as my nested domain. And it tells you what the size of the maximum domain, so 47%. And if I hit submit, then it's going to change that and shrink it down. So we can see here how that changed our plan view map. So if I keep moving on down to the next option here, we've got the our data set that we can display. So as I said before, we're on the href CONUS, but we can look at the MBM and a bunch of different parts of the world. We can look at the LREF, which is our grand ensemble that we also use for clustering analysis as well. So I'll click on that. And you can see here that it also updates this domain, because now we're looking at the LREF, which has a much larger domain size, and I can move that around to different areas. And just like before, you'll see the data window in the area that you're concerned with. So going on down the list here, we've got the forecast runtime. And as you might expect, we can go back and look at previous forecasts. So I'll just pull up an old one here. And since I'm viewing a data set with clustering, I can choose to view it in that way, or I can look at it as the ensemble. So I'm going to leave it on ensemble for now, and we'll come back to clustering later. So select member, that means that I can choose our different ensemble members that are going into this grand ensemble. So the European or the GEFs, whatever you want to look at. If you want to just look at the European ensemble members, for example, I can do that. Or I can just go back to our grand ensemble. And so one of the biggest changes with DESI 3.0 is the layers view. So now you have the option of displaying multiple layers, much like you would in AWIPS, where if you wanted to look at wind barbs or contours along with a shaded map, you can do that. And that can be done by clicking this plus sign. That allows you to just add on extra layers on top of what's already in your this list here. Or you can have these little arrows here which let you replace them. So if I have it on the replace option, I can go up and select a different data set, and it's going to change that out. And you can see here, so I selected the 500 millibar heights, and that loaded up a shaded layer. And it also loaded up a contour layer. So, and it's denoted here by, you can see there's a purple and a blue box kind of around these two different layers. And you can hide them as well. So if you just want to look at one at a time, you can just decide to show that. You can also just hide one altogether here. So we can see the shaded layer. If I click on the eyeball here, I can show and hide that information. I can also click here in the top right, and that just removes those layers. So another nice thing is if you hit the control button on your keyboard, you can see that it's a little hotkey that allows you to change whether or not you're adding layers or replacing them. So I'm going to go back up here and just load our 2-meter temperature, and we'll work our way through some of the other options that are available. So as we already saw, you can look at a shaded layer or a contour layer, and you can show them in full color or in just black. I'll go back to the shaded. We can look at so opacity. I can decrease the opacity to allow some other layers show through from underneath, so we can see more of the base layer there when I decrease the opacity. So here's so our field options, and you're going to have a lot of different choices here, but we'll start with statistics. So what this means is that I can show the grand ensemble in a lot of different ways. So right now we're looking at the mean, but I can look at, say, the 95th percentile. I can go down to, say, the 10th percentile, and then we'll see much cooler temperatures here in this case. I can also choose spread, and now what this does, this is going to show me, in this case, the difference between the 75th and 25th percentiles. Or I can look at the 90th and 10th percentiles, and if I hover over some different spots on the map, it'll show me a readout of the temperature difference and the mean temperature, and then the 10th and the 90th percentiles on that spot on the map. I can also look at timing. So this brings up a lot of different options, and it's a very nice way to potentially brief partners on the onset or cessation of specific conditions. So as we saw before, we're still on statistics, and we're looking at the mean. And in this case, we're looking at the onset of less than 32 degrees. And I can change each one of these different options if I had some different threshold that I was curious about. We also have window down here. So we're looking at the entire length of the time frame, but I can shrink that down. So say I just wanted to look at the first half of the forecast period, and I can submit that, and then it's going to change what I'm looking at now, because I'm only looking at Thursday at 5 p.m. through Tuesday at 5 a.m. And I can look at, say, what might be my earliest onset of temperatures less than 32 degrees. And we can see how that adjusts. So the white here, we can see that it says, well, it's plus 0 hours. It's already happening in that part of the country. But if I go down a little farther, say if I go to Dallas, that it's plus 78 hours at Sunday at 11 p.m. What if I go to the latest? And so if I come down here to Dallas, now I'm looking at plus 108 hours, so Tuesday at 5 a.m. I can also choose to display this as a percentage. So when I click on that, this is going to tell me a percentage of the members of the full grand ensemble, in this case, that are meeting this criteria. So a lot of yellow on this map here, where 100% of the members are reaching 32 freezing temperatures. But if I look down here along the international border, we can see that there's about 20% of the members are reaching freezing temps. If I click on all, that's going to show me a tiled view, and that's going to display our earliest, our 10th, our 25th, and so on, down to the latest and the percentage as well, the bottom right. So here's a way just to kind of digest a lot of information as just a tiled view of the data. So let's go down to our final option in this case, which is probabilities. So the first thing to point out is window here. So we want to think about this as going back in time from our current forecast hour, in this case 6 hours. So what percentage of the members are reaching my threshold looking back 6 hours, or let's say 24 hours, whatever you want to set that window to. The dataset will update accordingly. I can also choose to display joint probabilities. So you can see here that I've got number of variables is just one, but I can select 2 variables. And so then it adds this additional field down here. So I was on 2-meter temperature to start with of 32 degrees less than. But I can also pull up, let's say, I don't know, how about wind speed? And we'll say wind speeds greater than 15 miles per hour. And then when I hit submit, now I have a joint probability, and I can go through and see how that changes over time, and hover over that and see how many members are reaching my new criteria that I've set. Another nice feature you can utilize is the smoothing radius here, so we can see that if you want to do that, you'll get that Gaussian smoothing and see how that changes the look of what you're displaying. And so I should mention that there are also some different field options that you might be allowed to display depending on what data set you're looking at. So let's say if I go back up here and click on the href, and we'll load in something different. Well, let's do composite reflectivity. So you can see here we've got statistics, timing, probability. There's also paintball. So right now I'm looking at paintball greater than 40 dBz, but I can change that. Let's go down to 25 dBz, and now we can see here that everything is updated, and we have a bunch of different paintballs that are showing the different members and where it's reaching my defined criteria. So the different colors represent the different members of the href ensemble, and where you have white, that means that you've got multiple members that are being overlaid. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways that you can load data in DESI, and I really recommend just looking through these different drop-downs and trying out some different groupings here where, for example, some of them have multiple layers already preset in there, or you can just look at one variable at a time. And everything is going to be listed here of what you can view. So JP means joint probability. So if you want to look at CAPE and shear, you can click on that, and then it's going to automatically load those different layers over here in your left panel. So let's finish up by talking about clusters. If I go back to the LREF dataset, we've got 2 meter temperature. I'll pull back a little bit, and we'll select this radio button for cluster analysis, and you'll see that a drawer opens up here that has all of our different clusters. So the 4 different clusters and then the grand ensemble. So right now I'm just looking at the 1 day period, so there's not much differentiation. But let's go way out in advance here. We'll look at the 9 day. And everything updates. And maybe I should go back up to the top here. So we're clustering on the western domain, but we can look at some different areas. So if I choose east, everything is going to update on the fly, and we'll see our 500 millibar charts and how those are all different from our grand ensemble. And so again, our map on the right is looking at statistics at the mean of our grand ensemble, but we can, of course, do a lot of different things with this. We can look at our different clusters. So I can pull up cluster 1, cluster 4, or to stick with the grand ensemble. One of the really nice things that you can do too is I can show all the different tiles together. So if I click this single or multi-panel view button, that's going to bring up each cluster and our grand ensemble. And then we can do something fun where we click on true over here for the difference from the grand ensemble. And now we're looking at how things change with each ensemble cluster. So as you can see on the top right here, it's showing much cooler temperatures than the grand ensemble. And why might that be? Well, if we look over here at our 500 millibar chart, we've got a much deeper trough moving through the area. And so this is a nice way that you can kind of slice things and view all the different clusters together. So the last thing I want to end with is a nifty little way that you can see what data sets are available to view right now. So if you come over here to the data set, you can see that there's this red dot. And if you hover over that, we can look at all of our different data sets, and it's going to show you if it's available, if it's late, if it's missing, and all that information is on this table. So I definitely encourage people to take a look at this, and you can find out when it should be arriving. And the status of these data sets are updated every minute, and when they arrive, you'll get a notification banner in DESI so that you know that you can switch to the latest data. Check out the other videos if you have more questions about how to use DESI.